Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a poem that I found, one that is about what the narrator is apparently thinking. It switches many different topics. I am referring to Psychoanalysis and Elegy by Jack Spicer. I've talked about Jack Spicer on this channel before. You can refer to the poem I did about any fool can get into an ocean for a more in-depth sort of understanding of who he is. But for those who don't know, he was an American writer who lived between the 1930s and 1960s. He died pretty young, it would seem. And he wrote a number of poems during his time and hung out with the beat poets, although I don't know if we would classify him as a beat poet. Possibly. And a lot of his poems aren't really that straightforward. You have to do a little bit of thinking, which is what he seemed to have intended with his work. He did say that he wasn't writing down his poems, he was receiving them like messages from somewhere, which is very strange. And it should also be noted that he was a gay writer as well. One of the many reasons that I'm talking about him during this period of Pride, where I'm trying to highlight LGBTQA plus poets and just share their stories specifically, whereas I might do that occasionally outside of these months. And again, this is going from the end of June until the end of July, essentially. And so without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Psychoanalysis and Elegy. What are you thinking about? I am thinking of an early summer. I am thinking of wet hills in the rain, pouring water, shedding it down empty acres of oak and manzanita, down to the old green bush tangled in the sun, greasewood, sage, and spring mustard. Or the hot wind coming down from Santa Ana driving the hills crazy, a fast wind with a bit of dust in it bruising everything and making the seed sweet. Or down in the city where the peach trees are awkward as young horses, and there are kites caught on the wires up above the street lamps, and the storm drains are all choked with dead branches. What are you thinking? I think that I would like to write a poem that is slow as summer, as slow getting started as 4th of July somewhere around the middle of the second stanza. After a lot of unusual rain, California seems long in the summer. I would like to write a poem as long as California and as slow as a summer. Do you get me, doctor? It would have to be as slow as the very tip of summer, as slow as the summer seems on a hot day drinking beer outside Riverside or standing in the middle of a white-hot road between Bakersfield and hell, waiting for Santa Claus. What are you thinking now? I'm thinking that she is very much like California. When she is still, her dress is like a road map. Highways traveling up and down her skin, long empty highways with the moon chasing jackrabbits across them on hot summer nights. I am thinking that her body could be California, and I am a rich Eastern tourist lost somewhere between hell and Texas, looking at a map of a long, wet, dancing California that I have never seen. Send me some penny picture postcards, lady. Send them. One of each breast photographed looking like curious national monuments. One of your body sweeping like a 3-lane highway, 27 miles from a night's lodging in the world's oldest hotel. What are you thinking? I am thinking of how many times this poem will be repeated, how many summers will torture California until the damned maps burn, until the mad cartographer falls to the ground and possesses the sweet, thick earth from which he has been hiding. What are you thinking now? I am thinking that a poem could go on forever. So that was psychoanalysis and elegy. In terms of analysis, there's a fair bit to talk about with this poem. In terms of narrative, there isn't a strict narrative. I think what's going on in this poem is, given the title, they're in therapy, and their therapist is asking them what they're thinking, and they're sort of going on a bunch of different tangents about California, about someone that they maybe have the hots for, and where they think the ultimate fate of California will be. And maybe that's giving some insight into what they might be thinking. As I just mentioned, the title kind of gives away what might be happening in this poem. It's psychoanalysis and elegy. What is an elegy? It's sort of like a story, a tale that's being told about someone or something. And so here it's maybe you're telling a tale about psychoanalysis and what it is, and how it's often like stream of consciousness. Maybe Jack Spicer is being very negative about psychoanalysis here. Kind of being ironic in a way, or maybe poking fun at the idea of psychoanalysis, that because our brains are, jump from topic to topic and don't always make sense, that perhaps psychoanalysis doesn't make sense. Although that could be me putting some of my own thoughts into psychoanalysis. Although I believe that psychoanalysis works, so I don't really know if that's me kind of projecting at all. Let me know what you think that the title of the poem could be. But another aspect of this poem are the different verses, what Jack Spicer is sort of talking about in this sort of stream of consciousness type writing, being very descriptive in the process. This is a very beautiful poem, I should say. You see it in the first verse, where it's like pouring water, shedding it down empty acres of oak and manzanita, down to the old green brush tangled in the sun, greasewood, sage, and spring mustard, or the hot wind coming down from Santa Ana. And I don't think you need to be in California or from California to sort of visualize that sort of thing. Although I do live in California, and I think I have a better understanding of these things because I live here now, because I understand what the Santa Ana winds are and all of those sorts of things. It kind of makes sense to me. But then Spicer, the narrator, goes on to talk about slowness and how long something is. Especially in the second verse, they say, I think that I would like to write a poem that is as slow as summer, as slow getting started as the 4th of July, somewhere around the middle of the second stanza, which is what this stanza is. After a long, unusual rain, California seems long in the summer. I would like to write a poem as long as California and as slow as summer. Do you get me, doctor? It would have to be as slow as the very tip of summer. And what's interesting about that is the way that he's writing, and the way that I think you're supposed to say it when you read it out loud, is you're supposed to go very slowly. And I can really understand what he's saying. I've lived in a couple of California summers. It's very hot, and you want to go slow because if you're outside, if you're being very active and whatnot, you're going to sweat a lot. It's going to be very uncomfortable for you. California is a very hot and terrible place, and you kind of get that later in the poem when he says, or standing in the middle of a white hot road between Bakersfield and hell, which I can definitely understand there, because California is, again, it's a very unforgiving place, even when it's not going through a drought or anything like that. I really like the second verse. It really sort of invokes like sort of not memories, but like sort of the imagery of California and the laid back kind of feel. Like the Spicer wants to slow it down, and that's precisely what he's doing in this poem. It's very interesting because it seems like he's sort of waxing nostalgic, or even showing his love of California, which is where he was from. But even people from California don't necessarily like it. But you see at the end of the poem that maybe it's not so warm, because he talks about like how many summers will torture California until the damned maps burn, until the mad cartographer falls to the ground and possesses the sweet thick earth from which he has been hiding. And then he talks about how the poem could go on forever, kind of being very meta, very self-aware of what's going on in the poem. He does that in one of the other poems that I've talked about, Any Fool Can Get Into an Ocean. It's very self-aware meta kind of poetry, poetry about poetry itself, which is very interesting in and of its own. You can still write a very beautiful poem as he does here, but talk about the nature of writing a poem and what it means and other things like that. So very interesting poem here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Psychoanalysis and Elegy by Jack Spicer. Pretty interesting and really fascinating poem. I do think there's a lot more that I could have talked about. Like you can definitely pull apart this poem and talk about the nature of writing poetry, about California, about what it means to love and also hate something. There's a whole bunch of things that I haven't said here, and let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this poem or this poet, or even Poetry Thursday if they want to talk about poetry on their own. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and California reminiscing travels. Farewell.